Welcome to Roll One Out, the Reframe-sponsored event.
You made it.
You did. We got through MAGFest.
We're here. We've survived.
Now we all get to go home.
Once we get through this.
To Seattle and or Alexandria and Manassas. And wherever else in Maryland.
And beyond. Hopefully.
All right, so Reframe is a paneling group. We're all on it. If you see Reframe-sponsored thing, it's one of us usually. And we just like to put it there because I'm vain, and yeah, it means that we're fun and cool. So
exaggeration.
I don't think so. So we're going to introduce ourselves. The panelists are all wonderfully selected for their specialties and experiences in the world. The following is a little introduction about themselves and why we deserve to be here. And that was a really cute picture I saw on Tumblr. All right, so I'm Lodestar. I feel I am the living embodiment of David Rose, Jenna Maroney, and Madison Montgomery. And I chose David Rose before season 3, before the show blew up. And now everyone else claims him too. I'm commonly mistaken for the king of K-pop, G-Dragon, but I don't see it. I think it's when my hair is black at one point, this picture specifically, but like 54 people mistook me.
You also have that exact same outfit.
Because of everyone thought that I looked like him,
Okay.
so I made this outfit.
Sure.
It totally didn't look like him still. I am an award-winning choreographer across the world and cultural barriers, the world meaning the state of Virginia, and awards being all given to me by my students on paper plates.
It counts.
But it does.
It counts.
Is that it? Oh, and I'm an Ophiuchus, if anyone knows what that is.
A what?
Astrology.
Ah, okay.
Right? Yeah.
Sure.
Astrology, I said it right.
Cool.
Oh, and that's me. I just really love that
How
picture.
many pictures of you do you have?
More than everyone else.
Okay.
Okay, so this is HazyAudio. He likes to make things difficult.
That's why I'm going to let him do all of my introduction.
Is a DM/GM. By the way, I should ask this too. Does everyone know what a tabletop game is?
Cool. We all on the same page? All right, cool.
If there's anything that you don't know, just raise your hand. Has a waifu named Ilia. Can see Mexico from his backyard in Arizona. And has 100% in Monster World Hunter World.
Some of that's... Yeah.
It's okay.
And that's a picture of the backyard.
Yep.
It sure is desert.
Yep. Ilia, way down yonder.
Only the most flattering picture for me.
It was at the Maryland Ren Fair.
Nobody's flattering at the Ren Fair.
No.
Yeah.
Ilia had a pet goat. Has a husband named HazyAudio. Is one of those former weird color guard girls.
Former weird.
Has watched Titanic 43 times in 1 week before.
I thought you got rid of that bullet.
Thank you. Okay, someone's actually doing the math for once.
Yeah, okay. We were roommates in college.
About 3 hours?
Yeah.
We were roommates in college. I left to go take a 5-hour exam, came back, and she had restarted the movie.
It was about the same spot, too.
It's like bookending your exam.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can't miss it. What's going to happen at the ending?
What if she missed something?
And has sunk over 1,000 hours into World of Warcraft with only 5 main characters.
Yeah, proud of that one, too.
No one cringed. None of you.
I mean, look, that's
progress.
fair.
It's actually amateur numbers, to be honest.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Oh. And is actually a natural blonde.
I don't know why this is important.
It was important to me.
Okay.
Oh, and that's the pet goat. I forgot his name.
Sammy. He was really cute.
Wait, is it an air vent or a crate?
It's an air conditioner.
Is that wall mounted or?
No, it's just kind of...
Just kind of there.
Just kind of, yeah.
Look, goats do love to climb and crave that mineral, but
No one said he was a smart goat.
look, he just wants to stay cool.
He was just the best goat. And then we have Cole Burkhardt. Woo. I said that right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Has never accomplished anything and will continue to do so. A direct quote. A voice artist, a professional sound engineer, a multi-talented podcaster, and does a lot of stuff for the love of God. Don't make me list them all.
Please don't make me list them all. I do so much stuff. I need to stop.
And then we also have Michael, who's sitting in the back. Used to pole dance, has read over 3,000 comics, has kept a recorded archive of the comics he's read, has an amazing board game collection and VR collection, and is not in the bathroom.
What?
Got it, okay. That's how you find out who knows what Be More Chill is.
Oh, Christ. Please don't get started on that.
Cool.
I will mute you.
So, why does any of this matter? So we took a quiz, and it was accurate, and it sucked.
Okay. So this is a quick and easy guide to finding out what class you should play in D&D.
It's faster than you think.
Yeah.
It only took 20 minutes.
Yeah, only about 20 minutes.
Some of those are, I think, 2 or 3 steps you get Ranger.
Listen, easiest one to do is Ranger.
Yeah.
Most of them lead to Bard.
Yeah.
When in
Not a
doubt,
whole
Bard
lot
it out.
lead to Road, but most of them are going to be like the edgier questions. Or
Yeah.
like answers.
But here's our results. I was a Bard. I also got Sorcerer. Cole was a Rogue. Hazy was a DM, because DM is on there as a thing.
Yeah.
Ilia was Druid, and I forgot what Mike got. But so I'm not surprised.
As a matter of note, since I don't actually think it was up on the slide, but together we've had, all 4 of us combined have had at least 100 years of DMing or tabletop experience. Don't know how that math works out, but
Well, because if I've been doing it since I was like 9, that's like almost 20 years now on my own,
cool.
and I'm one of the younger ones up here.
But if we're all in our
do some,
20s.
Fun
all
slant
mid-20s.
math, you can do all the calculations.
Yeah. Regardless, we've been playing D&D and other tabletop games for quite a while and know kind of what it takes to set up a character.
And with each other,
Yeah.
which is a big thing we'll get covered later. So character importance. Getting into the game. Making a character is your way to be in a game, right?
Kind of the first step for being in a game.
And this is tabletop and video games half the time when they let you create your character. Without them, it's not an RPG or an RP in-game.
It's just a board game.
That's a good way
Which,
to
well,
put
board
it.
games are
bad.
fun.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
And it's cool to see people like yourself when you're making a character, which is stuff we'll touch on. And it is the bridge that connects our reality into their reality.
And by there, we mean the game's reality.
I meant our characters.
Characters, DMs, game's reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you go read scholarly things, they'll reference it as the primary universe and the secondary universe. What we're in right now, physically, tangibly, is the primary, and whatever else you're talking about is the secondary universe, like Hogwarts, Narnia. Yeah. So if you ever research on your own. All right, so the decisions. There's like a million RPGs that we play daily, which makes it hard to choose sometimes. Now, throw in the fact that you need to create your characters, avatar, protagonist, whatever you want to call it, into the game. And despite all these decisions, there has been historically an overwhelming lack of choices within the realm of diversity. So here's the disclaimer stuff. Now, we understand that programmers, video game makers, and game designers can only make so many choices half the time. And the reason why I put that is because the first time I did this panel, there was a game designer that got really defensive. Like, do you understand how hard it is to program? Look, no, I don't, but okay, fine. And we understand diversity is a new trend within the world. That does not mean that the fast world of video games should not be able to keep up in some capacity. And this is not meant as an attack, but as a thought-provoking discussion upon the video game and tabletop world. More disclaimers. All opinions here are valid. If it wasn't obvious before, we want to hear and see your opinion, so please be vocal and cheer or ask questions. And if anyone has any hurt or confused opinions, I am a licensed mental health professional who could discuss your feelings after the panel. And I took off work for this, so it's no big deal. If I do, it's just like being at work. So, session 0. Who knows what session 0 is?
Cool. Yes. So session 0 is the first session you do before the very first campaign or like story-driven session of your games. Session 0 is where you go over characters, what the rest of the party is going to be doing, what you'd like to see in the world, what you'd like to see from your DM, things you wouldn't like to see from your DM. It's a good way to get everyone established on a general baseline before your story actually begins.
Very big collaborative effort.
Yes.
So if you're trying to play a tabletop role-playing game, session 0 may be best. It's where everyone meets to discuss important game factors, and it usually turns into making characters. And everyone runs their session 0s differently, and Hazy and Cole have done them. I don't remember if you ever did one, Ilia, but if you have, feel free, because I know you two have done distinctly 2 different types.
Yeah.
We did the text message session 0 over the course of several days.
Which is fair and valid.
That's valid too.
Yeah.
Whatever works best, just make sure that you sit down and have a conversation about what you expect from your characters and from the world.
Whereas I like to have an in-person or over voice, just something so we're, because text for me is very difficult to like understand inflection and stuff, so I really like having in-person session 0 games, or at least everyone gets on a voice chat and talks about what they want to see. Text is fine, but also I have the memory of a goldfish, and so it's nice to have everything kind of all there.
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, I have my characters write up as much of a backstory as I feel like giving to me specifically, and then work with them on story beats they want to hit on with their characters, and to make sure that nobody's confused on how the rules of the game, how to set up the characters themselves. Generally, when we meet for the first time for my sessions, it's just to discuss the characters, because I already have all their background.
Also, session 0 is like where you get to create your own kind of spin into the game. Like I said, it's a huge collaborative effort. I mention this a lot, but I played a game where the DM requested that we pick a theme song for each of the characters. But then they would find like some instrumental version of it somewhere to like subtly play when something relevant to our character would happen. But this is where we would present the theme songs. And things like that. That's where you just get as much information as you want and or need. But I also, like, session 0 could also be testing out your character to see if you even like them.
Even seeing if they're going to mesh well with the rest of the party, or just if you need help with creating a character, you can get input from all your party members to make it, flow a little bit better.
Because your session 0 for our first game was when we just like had the battle arena, right?
Yeah. Yes. So for one session 0, in order for everyone, it was we had 8 new players, and because
bad idea.
Real bad idea. Most D&D tabletop games should at least be 4. Don't do 8. It's hell. So in order for us to do a brief introduction without us taking 2 hours for everyone to go around and talk about their characters, I did a short little battle arena, and every time one of the characters came out to be in the battle, we would give like the description. We'd do that like My Hero Academia, like the card would flash up and they'd give the names and the description and like some cool bullet points, and then I would walk them through how to like do battle or do combat in D&D, which was pretty fun.
We've also had a couple of instances where our session 1 turned out to be a session 0 when
no one shows up with characters done.
All of your characters are dead at the end of session 1, so you just reroll characters.
Sometimes total party kills happen.
Yeah. Turns out goblins are a lot tougher to handle if your party is ill-equipped to handle anything.
Yeah.
But, so in session 0, it's where you get to discuss the limits of a game. Also, I thought that meme was cute. So, with the power of imagination, you can have anything you want to happen actually happen within the game. Make sense?
To some extent.
For better or for worse.
Yeah. That does not mean you want everything to happen in a game. So, Cole, this is like your area of expertise.
Cool. So in a lot of tabletop games, there has been something that is becoming more common, and it's called lines and veils. Lines and veils are a safety mechanism through games, where you can tell your DM, hey, this is the line in the sand. If this is in the game, I will not play. Veils are like, oh, if there's a situation that happens in the game, we can slowly work around it and see how I feel as we go. In the past, a lot of tabletop games haven't had those safety mechanisms in place, which means a lot of people who deal with trauma or triggering emotions or things like that haven't really had a good way to approach their DM about things they don't want to see. I'm really glad it's becoming more built into games, especially in the Powered by the Apocalypse system. It's been like, I've been seeing like actual pages worth of safety mechanisms within games, and it's fantastic. It's also a way to like discuss certain things you want to see in your world. Like, I'm not a huge fan of fantasy racism. Let's try and not have that in the game. Or I don't want to see any like violence against women or violence against minorities. Let's not see that in a game. Session zeros are great ways to form those lines and veils and boundaries with everyone in the group.
And it doesn't always have to be something so major. It could just be like, I'm claustrophobic, please don't shove me like in a cage.
Or like, I don't want my character to be like fucking thrown off a cliff because that's traumatic to me. Or I don't want to see like toads or whatever.
I don't like water.
I don't like water, yeah, that's fair. But yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Here you're discussing the player's concerns, not the character's concerns.
Yes, we are talking about the player's concerns. Character concerns can also, I guess, tie into that depending on you, but yes, generally player concerns.
I usually just play myself because I'm a horrible actor.
Yeah.
And keep out of the mindset.
Like, a lot of my character I put myself into, and so I still would not like to see that character in particular situations. So I guess the character also doesn't want to be in those particular situations.
The reason I ask is sometimes you want to create a character that has certain phobias.
Right, yeah. And this is just in case you don't want to do that.
And that is something you can easily clarify. Just say, hey, my character, feel free to play with that fear. Session zeros, they're great. All right, but also a big thing about session 0 is a balanced party.
Well, we can fight about this.
Something we have done over the past years is to use this time to create a balanced parties and assign roles to each other. It's usually volunteering. And playing with the same group of people for many years, each of us have our own set ways, and we just found a way to operate together. Go for it.
Right. When I'm creating parties, I kind of don't like it when it's balanced. Like, my favorite campaign that I've done was everyone was a bard. It didn't, like, we didn't plan it that way. I knew for sure we would have 2 members who wanted to be a bard, and that was fine, and then everyone showed up with a bard party. And I'm like, all right, let's do this. We'll be a traveling band of musicians just causing chaos as we go on tour. Balanced is, of course, something you can discuss, but I don't think it's necessary when you're creating a campaign.
This is very uncommon.
There we go.
And why session zeros are very important if you want a balanced party.
Yeah, some people get frustrated if they can't have easy victories at the very beginning of a session, or they get frustrated where, like, your party's just not doing enough damage, or you can't do the things you want to do in society. Like, you don't have that bard to charisma your way out of a situation, or you don't have that fighter to take all the hits for your sorcerers. Like, that's where the balanced party, it doesn't have to be, please. I think it's completely muted.
Yeah. Can you talk?
I am talking.
Oh, there we go.
Can you hear me now?
Which one is he?
This one.
Okay, cool.
Sorry about that, guys.
You're good.
But yeah, usually for our case, none of us show up with a healing ability.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, who's gonna take the one heal spell this time?
Which a lot of systems are actually making efforts to provide other alternative sources for healing, so you don't have to have the healer anymore. So you don't have to have that one guy relegated to, or girl, or they. I don't know the pronouns.
You tried.
You know?
Cool.
The creature.
The creatures, yes.
Cool. A lot of the Powered by the Apocalypse games, especially like Dungeon World, are doing those things where you can roll basic like medicine check, or they have, instead of just specific rolls for the healers, there are rolls that like multi-class without actually technically multi-classing, or rather the playbook has a whole bunch of different like classes or class moves that you can take, that will make it so you don't always need to have one person be the healer. You can spread out the responsibility.
We found out this weekend Pathfinder 2 did that. If you just get a medicine kit, you can roll medicine checks.
Look, the more I hear about Pathfinder 2, the more I actually want to play Pathfinder.
That's a bummer. You should try it.
Yeah, but see,
What
the
a
thing is,
shame.
I
What
didn't
a
want to
pity.
play Pathfinder 1.
Yeah.
So, like,
Sucks, bro.
It's cool
Yeah.
that it's a different edition.
we'll see.
And then lastly, the important part of making a character is a character class. Everyone knows what the character class is, right? Awesome. Cool. I found this really fun chart. It's a D100.
So you roll a D100, and then each individual triangle is a different class and subclass you can take. Some of them are, I believe this is from 5e. No, Mage. Mage isn't 5e. What is Mage?
It's like mage type rolls.
Okay, cool. And depending on the triangle, you can kind of flavor text your character to be that way, or in D&D, they've got those actual subclasses.
And yeah, the points of the triangle are like the more roguish, the more fightery, the more magic-y. And they come up with weirdly everything on Earth. But class is basically defined as how you want to play in the game. And there are many different forms and loads to learn about each of them, which is why a session 0 is also good, because you get to learn how to play your character.
I find it funny that in the very smack middle of all those triangles is Bard.
Yep.
Yep, number 42. Good eye.
They're just so versatile. You can do
Oh,
just
yeah.
about anything with them.
And the fun thing is, even if your character class is something like a road, you can still play your character as if it's a different class. For instance, I played a road character who, their day job was they were a bard. They went around and they sang songs and distracted people, and while everyone was deep in their cups, they stole from their pockets. And it was a very fun take, instead of just being the like dark, edgy, mysterious road gonna go like stab, stab, stab and disappear into the night. No, you can make a road that is hiding in plain sight. You don't have to stick to the archetypes and stereotypes of the classes that you have available.
So we have other important ideas to think about. That's actually one of the characters I play in Pathfinder. A kineticist. If you haven't heard of them, they're basically benders. They're super
Ooh.
fun. Yes. It's only in 1 right now, not 2 yet.
Oh.
But anyways, the following section are important factors people forget to think about sometimes when they're playing games. These are also options that you consider when playing video games as well. And sometimes it can be overwhelming the amount of options you can select. Has anyone ever felt that? Does anyone have any examples?
Lady in books, especially riff setting.
Oh, jeez.
It's been around for 30 plus, almost 40 years, and let's put it this way, there are currently 42 world books. And
Oh, jeez.
Oh.
Boy.
if we're pretty much, as a GM, it's basically a case of, okay, what general subclass do you want to play? Do you want to play human or not? And after that, here's your 5 or so books you get to choose from. It really, it's bad. At one point, I just ended up making a starter packet. It encompassed, like, the highlights of the world history and just general significant big baddies and big good guys. And here's your basic equipment. And from there, you know, you have like 10 classes to choose from, and then after you grow the system, then you go branch out.
All right.
Lady of Books is really bad about options.
Okay, I think you had your hand up, and then we'll. Okay.
Gamma World can have a lot of options, but I think depends on the DM, like if they narrow it down, it's good. But it's a world in which it's post-apocalypse. You can play a mutated character that includes any type of animal, that includes any type of... you can do robots,
mutated squirrel.
any type of robot. You can do pure strain human, you can do plants, any type of mutated plant you could possibly think of, you could do. Or symbiotes. I chose a symbiote fungus that like mutated and is able to talk and blends with a mutated bird. That's what I chose.
Cool.
Wow.
And you said it's called Gamma World?
Yeah, it's a post-apocalyptic game. It's kind of like Fallout if it became a system.
And had way more options.
But it can be very, very expansive if you don't limit the options a little bit for the players.
Sure.
It can get wild.
Okay.
Right, so some of the actual things some people think about, and we really kind of try to get specific-ish, because we all know, like, hair color, height, all that. But body image is something people forget to think about a lot. The games today show many plots of peril and intense situations of active lifestyles. That does not mean everyone has to be super slim or overly muscular. Yeah.
So body image, along that same vein, I want to talk about disabilities in tabletop games. A disability is not a character flaw. A lot of times in games, I'll see things where, like, in order to take a negative to your character, which is most of the time going to be a disability, you did a positive on top of it, which is not great. It's certainly something that needs to be worked on, because having a disability, while it is challenging, isn't generally handled well. You can work with your DM to say, like, oh, if my character is blind, I will have these specific disadvantages, but also there are certain ways we can work around that. A lot of times in fantasy games, you'll also see people who can, like, their disabilities will kind of be like magically hand waved away. Like someone can take severe harm and damage and lose a leg, but still not have any, like, still be able to move in the same way that other people do. Sorry, I'm rambling. I'm very tired. I was up very late last night. One of the issues is that exploring characters outside of your own personal experiences, a lot of people don't consider disabilities when they do think of something outside of their character. I think it's an interesting challenge and something you should definitely work with your DM on, but disabilities are not always negative, especially in role-playing games.
I think just recently we ran a campaign where Lodestar was playing a mute character, and he had a series of hand signs and I can't remember exactly what else you had, but we had a system set up where he could talk to all the other characters and interact with the world just fine.
But it was something that someone with his disability could reasonably do.
It was a huge, like, story point. Like,
He was really a half banshee too.
Yeah, he really wanted his character to be mute, so we're like,
So
sure, we'll work
once
with
we
it.
hit level 5, he realized he could scream.
I've had a character that lost an arm, and my DM was like, oh, we can just get you a mechanical one. And I'm like, well, yeah, but even once I get that mechanical arm, I still have to relearn how to, like, use that arm. So instead of, I was a, what was I? I was a rogue, and when I lost my arm, we, in universe, got a cool, like, crossbow arm, so I took a level in ranger instead of leveling up my rogue. So we could kind of, like, skin a ranger class, but have it be me learning and growing with my disability.
You had a question, sir?
Yeah, there are a lot of systems out there that they can implement a weakness on top of your, like you can buff your character as much as you want, but you have to take a weakness. You can choose what weakness you have sometimes, and I like to do that as like a form of disability. Like one of my characters has amnesia, regular amnesia. Like every day you have to roll to see if you forget the events of the previous day. And then you just have to try and cope with by taking notes. Like if you're a character and you write out things for yourself, you can show the DM, I look at my notes, clearly I forgot something. And that could be a way of showing somebody who has memory problems in their life.
That sounds about right.
Or any kind of formal disability, you could make into your character.
Eventually, we should mention sensitivity readers, but we can touch on that later.
All right. So other things to think about is gender identity.
Cool. As the resident trans, I will also be talking about this. The gender binary is something that's seen a lot in tabletop games. In some of the early versions of D&D, if you played a woman, you would have certain negative, not advantages, but you would have certain disadvantages that you would get just because you were playing a woman. Eventually, they made that to just if you're playing a human. There hasn't really been an option outside of male or female unless you're playing an alien or a robot or whatever, but non-binary people are, people too. They don't always need to be robots or always need to be aliens.
And real fast, how do we define gender binary?
So gender binary, within the society that we live in, gender binary is tend to be people who are born with, what's the best way to put this? People who are generally identified as male or generally identified as female. Because of how it is, most of the time it's defined by the sex characteristics. But someone who is non-binary is someone who does not identify with either the male or female, both or neither. If you are out of it, you generally are gonna, how far do I want to explain this? Essentially, gender binary is anyone who does not identify as male or female. Sometimes they can identify as both, gender fluid or gender queer. Sometimes they can identify as neither, which is agender, or a couple other different genders, but I'm not a teacher.
I like to describe it as this. Think of a light switch. You have the ones that just go up and down. That's the binary. Or you could have the dimmer. That's the spectrum.
Gender is a spectrum. Sometimes you are on one end, sometimes you're on the other, sometimes you're just kind of wherever. It's up to you. If your character wants to be, or rather if you would like your character to be something that is not the gender you identify with, I think that's fantastic. Just know that people who aren't the same gender as you or people who are non-binary are still people. We don't have to have anything special about us to make us non-binary. We just are who we are.
Which leads us into sexuality. So, along mainstream staple of sexuality, hetero, bisexual, homosexual are the main three historically, but guess what? That is also a spectrum.
Yes. I do want to touch on, there are absolutely more sexualities than just heterosexual, bisexual, and homosexual. I'm not going to get into all of them because I don't know definitions for all of them, and everyone's valid regardless. Labels are also, you don't have to be outright and say, oh, my character is straight or my character is genderqueer. You can just have your character and have it come up naturally. If you do want to do this, that's absolutely fine. I enjoy flirting with hot NPCs regardless of who they are. And will warn my DM of that at session 0. But if you are going to play around with sexuality, be very careful of the lines and veils that other players have drawn in the session 0. If someone says, if just in real life, if you are flirting with someone and making them uncomfortable, stop. Don't do it. Same with if you are flirting with someone's character, or if you are flirting with an NPC and it's made obvious by your DM or by the player that they are uncomfortable, don't do it. Not that hard.
Consent is cool.
Consent is sexy.
All right. Oh, and just some more opinions. Diversity is not about being politically correct.
People have always been diverse, it's just now we've got more attention on it.
Basically what the rest of the thing says. But it's about showing the popular, the unpopular, and everything in between.
As a note, I want to talk about sensitivity consultants, especially very important for DMs. If you are trying to create a story about a culture or society that is not your own, for instance, if I were going to create a story based in India, I don't know what happens in India. I mean, I do. It's whatever. Internet can also give me the bare minimum of what happens in India, but the only person who's really going to know what that culture is like is someone who is from India. There are many, many people out there on the internet called sensitivity consultants who will go through and work with you either for money or for friendship or fucking whatever. As long as you compensate them, it's do whatever you want, but they will work with you to make sure that the society you are creating, even though it is fantasy, is still respectful and represented properly. Because if you don't do that, it's kind of really disrespectful if you aren't bringing the full amount of care to a different person's culture. Even if there are dragons, there are still, you know, people and places.
And things.
And things.
All right. And then there's also non-human races. What?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, races, non-humanoid races, and non-human races themselves. So, a big push I've been seeing a lot lately, like on the very, very low, deep depths of Tumblr that still is thriving. Just most people left. All right. But they want non-humanoid races. They're kind of sick of like the bipedals or the 4 appendages and a head type of people and creatures. It's because if you really look at everything, it's either that or a goo blob. I don't know how else to describe it, but it's a piece of goo blob.
Well, sometimes that's a mood. Sometimes I just want to be goo.
I mean, yeah. But a lot of people are trying to push for, because from what I know, the only media I've seen that's tried to expand from that is actually the blue avatar people. But even then...
Oh, even then.
Even then, people were trying to question the proportions. We had this discussion in high school. Yeah. It was very long ago.
Okay.
But they're just pushing, they just get more creative. And if it is a fantasy world, maybe gravity works different on that world, so maybe proportions can be different than what we have on this round Earth that we live on.
First of all, D&D and Pathfinder and all of those more mainstream games are not great at providing a bunch of races or non-humanoid and non-human races. We have the general ones, you know, the Kenku, the kobolds, the humans, we got elves, we have dark elves, we have, you know, everything. A lot of indie games kind of push past that. Lasers and Feelings, which is a very good, it can be GM-less, but I believe it is a GM'd game, has a whole bunch of alien races and a whole bunch of descriptors, so you yourself can create the actual race. What's another good one? Masks has been getting pretty good at it. They've got a lot of like elementals, which is very fun to play with. Oh, what's that other Powered by the Apocalypse one? Powered by the Apocalypse is a fantastic series for finding non-humanoid, more than just the bipedal races. So I'd encourage everyone to look into those. And when I say Powered by the Apocalypse, I mean game systems that run on a 2d6 system instead of a regular d20.
Oh.
Yeah. Powered by the Apocalypse was originally a single tabletop game, and then everyone made like skins and redos and inspirations of it, and so the entirety of it became Powered by the Apocalypse, not just the Apocalypse game.
So would the game I played be considered Power of the Apocalypse, the one with the candles?
No, that one is not. 10 Candles?
Yeah.
Yeah, 10 Candles is not a Powered by the Apocalypse game.
But 10 Candles is fun.
10 Candles is fun, but it's not, there's no character creation for it. I mean,
No.
there kind of is, but.
But something that people really, really gloss over when they're thinking of diversity within characters is the backstory of all things. So not everyone has to be a starving orphan on the streets. I was adopted, so I like being the starving orphan. But backstories are only limited by what you can agree with on your GM or DM in your games, or whatever they call them and everything else. But backstories can be inspired by many, many different things, such as your own life experiences, other forms of media. Raise your hand if you've ever just blatantly stolen a character to play as. Me.
Yep.
Job ideas, and I always forget about jobs, like in D&D and Pathfinder whenever I'm playing, but yeah, there's a whole list of jobs right here, and more. Does anyone have any good examples of things they just randomly took from or were inspired by?
CJ and Cherry's Foreigner series, short version is humans landed on an alien world, slowly gave them technology, and it's kind of a cross between samurai and Klingon culture. Assassination is permitted within a very specified, rigid framework. Humanoids are 7 feet tall, all black with gold eyes, and just very, it's an interesting take on feudalism.
All right.
But, because of assassination, I actually imported an Anteva, and in the game system, you can't be an assassin unless you're evil. But their culture is not.
Right. I like that.
So there's that. They're also they're mathematically based, so everything like your party has to be fortuitous numbers. And they speak in kind of a third person. And I actually had a couple of players in the group that got pissed off. They're like, why can't you talk normal? And me and the GM looked at them and go, because she's not. So that's one thing that I found can be good. Another thing too that I found useful over the years, especially when you play with a long-standing group, is you have your organizations or your families that you kind of play, I guess they call it a legacy character. And that can be a lot of fun too because you're playing a new character. But because of some shenanigans by this person over here 2 years ago, you deal with the fallout. That can be fun backstory as well.
What are y'all's like favorite backstories to play off of?
I like being an orphan on the street that was part of the circus.
Cool.
Like, I'm
Do you
not
have any
creative.
tropes or stereotypes you like?
Honestly, every time I make a character, I end up with something different. I ended up, probably my favorite character I've ever created is an elf druid who botched a wild shape transformation and is stuck in their animal form, and now they're just wandering the earth looking for a cure. And so you have this very powerful cat wandering around, casting thunderbolt at people. But you can do anything. Your character, their family was massacred by a monster, and yeah.
Surprisingly, the cat was the only one that understood the half banshee.
Yeah, you know a lot of languages for just being a cat.
You can
Very smart
understand languages, you just can't speak them. You can read and write language, but yeah. No, I mean, for me personally, I usually just stick with like City Guard because I'm boring.
You do play a lot of guards.
I do.
You were the Minotaur guard, you were the human guard,
And you can thank me later when your party survives because I took all the damage for you.
There we go.
And one fun thing to keep in mind with making backstories is how detailed you want to get. Because while you can be very detailed and create this entire, like, you can create a town for your character that exists somewhere far away, sometimes you find that if you just have a concept, you don't have to have a lot of detail. It can almost be more fun to work with. It can come up in the most unusual of places.
It encourages character growth.
And that's if you
allows-
have a.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, if you have a really good DM, try that. You have 2 sentences. That's it. Have fun.
Give them everything in the world to work with, and then hope for the best.
Or you could be like me and type up a 5-page paper about why my character is awesome and everyone's going to love them. Because I already make too much work for myself. I really, when I'm making a character, I'll come up with their backstory first, and then I'll like actually go and do the mathematics for it. But backstories, I have always wanted to be bigger than myself, and so being able to have the opportunity to make characters who are bigger than me, and my desperate need to write everything kind of makes me really like planning out my backstories. I'll work with DMs to make sure everything's like canon and copacetic in the universe, but for the most part, I like to. What's the best way to say this without sounding like a psychopath? I like to have characters who have gone through the worst in their life, and that way during the campaign they can grow and blossom and become better people. So I like my backstories to be a bit more fleshed out.
Speaking of which, no, this reminds me. So if you cannot find a big enough party to play a game with, what we have done is we just play multiple characters.
Please only do this if you've played the game more than once.
Yes.
I know sometimes having one character can be a handful. Make sure you're working with your DM to accurately juggle your characters.
Or if you're crazy, you can have one character, and then you can have a summoner and have 2 characters on top of your already one character.
That's me.
There are a couple different game systems that have like stuff like that built in. For example, there's one called BX, which is a very brutal dungeon crawling system, where you are encouraged to make multiple characters because they're all gonna die. And so you have these things called couriers, and the more couriers you have, all of the XP that you gain throughout the dungeon gets spread out between your couriers. So the more couriers that die off, the more XP you get, but it's also harder to survive the less folks you have. So yeah, you can do multiple characters, as long as you're careful.
It's been working pretty well so far for us.
And when I make multiple characters, I make a very detailed backstory for one. The other one, I'm like, the 2-sentence thing.
Yeah.
And that's fun too, because you have like your character you know, but then you get to play off whatever ideas other people come up with for you. And it's just a whole fun dynamic. But lucky for us, diversity has been growing. Dungeons & Dragons and other tabletop RPG games have been promoting diversity beyond the physical limitations with expansiveness of the mind. Pathfinder has as well. And the great thing about all this is that if you have an imagination, it's always been there in your world. Woo.
Whenever the topic of diversity comes up in role-playing games, people always say, oh, well, it's fantasy. Sometimes this fantasy area may not have these specific types of diversity, but it's fantasy. If you can have a dragon, you can have black people. Like, people are getting so upset about The Witcher having people of color, and it's like, you can just make it up. You can just put people of color in your game, or you can have people of other genders in your game. It is entirely up to you. So if you're not seeing diversity in your game, it's because you haven't put it there.
And that is the beautiful thing about these game systems is, honestly, unless you're doing something officially sanctioned that has to follow by these rules, it doesn't matter.
No.
Homebrew it.
We can play
Put it in
Calvin
there.
Ball. As long as you are making it clear to your players that you're playing Calvin Ball, you can do whatever you want.
I have no idea what that is.
Me neither.
Neither do I.
You guys don't know what Calvin... Okay.
No, we don't get around that much.
Okay.
Sorry. How disappointed you
Okay,
again.
Calvin and Hobbes.
Okay.
They had a game that was essentially them just making up rules as they went.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah,
Oh.
illiterate.
That's a shame.
I know.
Yeah.
I don't know why my head went to DashCon.
No.
Just the ball pit.
No.
Very close.
Very close. You know, apparently someone gave birth at DashCon.
We're gonna move on past that.
So anyway, we got facts. So now we understand that we've labeled everything the way it is and supposed to be, and people are all on the same page. The question is, how do people implement their own consciousness, thinking, and thought process into the game? And this is where people's specialties start to come in. Thanks. So it's not only just the players who create characters. It's, like I said, a big collaborative effort. So writing and creating characters also includes the people writing and or running the game. We do a lot of homebrew, that's why I think writing. But when you are creating a plotting out a novel or a game, whatever, how does it differ when you create one for an RPG game?
It kind of doesn't.
No. Thank you.
I have a general overarching plot of like, oh, this is how they start out, this is how the big bad guy's introduced, and this is how the rest of it can go. I'll do individual session plannings if I need to do something more detailed, like making battle maps or individual encounters, but it's basically the same as writing an actual book. It's just my characters aren't ones I've specifically created.
And don't get frustrated if your characters decide they don't want to do that and they go plane hopping.
Yeah, fun things about parties is they are never going to do exactly what you want them to. Most of the time, they're just never going to do anything you want them to. So sometimes having more is better, although sometimes it can get a bit overwhelming. So yeah, just make sure you have a decent structure set up, and it's basically the same thing.
And to the room, what aspects do you like to consider when you're creating your own characters? That includes us too, if we think of things.
Cool.
Oh.
Family is actually a weirdly important one for me. Since most people are born with a family, or at least most people are born, you are shaped by the people around you. Their home culture, this may be why I'm so into cults, but their home culture is super important for how they're raised, and so their like society is what I think of first.
That is definitely not me, because I always play an orphan. You never knew your family. And I honestly don't care if my family background never comes up. It's more fun.
I mean, I usually try to take a more societal approach, where I'll try to mold my characters around the society they grew up in and how that affects their personality, their character growth.
Are you going right now? Can you not wait? Okay, cool.
All right, excuse me for a moment.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Please.
Please do.
The thing that I like to do is I tend to create characters that create items within the world. So I give them an idea of, oh, I want to create this type of armor or this type of weapon, and I have them strive to acquire the materials for it, trying to always when there's downtime, having to go to
Oh, I love that.
or if it was more potion derivative, going to like material shops and then creating and trying to create things that are new that may not be considered part of the part of what is base D&D. I know the one thing that's been driving me mad is I get to create a shield with an armor class of 3.
Oh, goodness.
No, that's really awesome. It's good to remember that your character exists outside of whatever the dungeon of the day is, and that they actually have interests and things that they want to do outside of face death down. And
Scum and Villainy has a very good mechanic for that, and you have downtime outside of missions where your character, normally when you're in life or death situations, you're a little bit stressed. And so those downtime is what helps you reduce the stress and the harm you've taken during damage, and also gives your character a reason to, do all the cool stuff they're doing. Gives them vices and help with character bonds and forming relationships outside of just doing daring deeds and killing everything in a dungeon.
I mean, sometimes you get tired of adventuring.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
This isn't my, this wasn't my idea, I was DMing this session.
Sure.
So my brother gets the credit. There's an old man with a background full of a very large beard, whose political leanings meant he wasn't even really interested in the party or party's goals. Any NPC that we met, we made him interested in finding out what their wages were, and what kind of collective action they might be interested in taking to benefit their society.
Hell
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
All right.
Okay.
Love that.
Would you like to seize the means of production?
Sure. And that goes back to.
You need eyes, my brother.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, something else to point out. The other fun part about not having such a distinct backstory is while you're playing, you can make it up.
Yeah, sometimes your story's just starting. That's why we start at level 1. Sometimes you don't have anything relevant in your life. Like, your character went to school, raised on a farm, hasn't done much else besides that, left to build a story.
Sometimes you just accidentally communism. You know?
Yeah,
It
sometimes you
happens.
accidentally communism. Sure.
The character I'm thinking of specifically is Hazel.
Yeah.
So she's a witch in Pathfinder, which means she's like a descendant from Baba Yaga or something like that. So I was like, fine, we're fleeing because I accidentally rolled in the backstory. She's a princess. So I was like, well, we're just going to run away from all that. But along the game, we met an NPC. I don't know why, but she hates this NPC. And we've extended this NPC's life by trying to kill her.
Not that she was going to die or anything. It's just her part of the story was complete, and then we dragged her along for seemingly no reason.
Look, sometimes NPCs are fantastic, and they need to stay in the story.
Yeah.
No matter what the DM says.
But because
This
Hazel's...
NPC is a piece of wood.
I'm sorry, what?
This NPC has the value of a piece of wood.
Okay, I thought you said a piece of wood named Hazel was the enemy for your character, and I was about to leave.
No.
Okay.
Not yet, but it's about to be.
No, but
Great.
because Hazel is
Anyway.
out to escape Baba Yaga and kill Kendra, her backstory is now she's trying to pull a Thanos and hope that it gets Baba Yaga and Kendra
Just,
and whoever
Pull-
else along the way.
sorry, pull a Thanos, so destroy half the universe.
Yes.
In hopes that these two very specific people are going to die from it.
Yes.
Sounds reasonable. All right, cool.
Doesn't have to be a great or well thought out plan. Just the important thing is he has goals in life.
She's also the healer, which is the funny part.
Jesus.
But also DMs and GMs. Also, this is a gorgeous picture.
It's a little hard to see, but
Feel free to walk up later. I'll have it up at the end.
Yeah, we'll keep it up at the end.
But okay, so Hazy and Cole, because I know you both like homebrew a lot. When you're creating a universe, how do you prepare for all the fine details that people come up with for characters that honestly mean little to you, but everything to them? Because I am that person too.
Yeah, I'll talk about that. Be a fan of your players. Even if you think the character idea is the dumbest thing you've heard in the world, your player obviously loves it. That's why they made it. Even if it's something little, celebrate that. Help them grow upon it. If you are going to be a negative Nancy DM, your players aren't going to have fun. So, like, leave room for growth. Build maps, but leave blanks.
Yeah, I mean, generally I go through and generate a huge world map. I don't put any town names or anything on there, except for maybe like the starting town and the next place that they have to go after that. But past that, like anything else that the players come up with is theirs to play with. I'm pretty sure on multiple occasions these guys have confiscated or liberated towns, and they just live there now.
Wait,
Yeah.
this is coming from the man who destroyed an entire mage tower and burnt it to the ground?
It wasn't me specifically.
Okay.
But I
All
was
of us.
definitely there when it happened.
Okay.
All right, and then what part of things do you think about to create an inclusive world?
Well, to quote Noelle Stevenson, all of my characters are gay unless stated otherwise. All of my characters are people of color, unless stated otherwise. Being someone who is racially ambiguous and very queer and gay, my world is already kind of inclusive, so just do it.
All right, and when you're playing, just be open to things because we're running out of time.
Yeah, sorry, we're gonna wrap it up.
So, if they have any questions, feel free to ask us.
I don't know that we've got the time, but if you have questions, you can come up to us.
We can officially close this. Then
Yeah.
you can ask us questions and we'll wander around with you. That's links if you like who we are. This is the panel schedule, but today's the last panel
Yeah,
for us,
so it
so we're
doesn't
done.
matter.
So otherwise, if anyone wants to see certain pictures, come up, say hey. Thank you for coming. We appreciate it. Sunday at 1.
If you want to see more from Reframe, you can go onto our website, which is reframe.wordpress.com, or you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ReframeCons. ReframeCons.
Because Reframe was taken, so it's reframecons.wordpress.com.
Cool. There we
Thanks,
go.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Hope you had a good MAGFest.